All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Canada Hoops. It's your boy, Matty. Thank you for your continued support. Please keep downloading and sharing us. Hit us up on Instagram and x.com. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We are talking Gordie Herbert being hired as the new head coach of the senior men's national team for Canada basketball. We'll touch on some Canadian NBA stories as well, especially as the playoffs are well underway. Joining us, a longtime friend, you know him on Twitter or X.com. He writes for the Raptors Republic. His Canada basketball coverage is excellent, especially diving into perhaps the X's and O's that the team runs. Our buddy Jonathan Chen. Chen, appreciate you coming back, man.
Yeah, of course. Always happy to be here, and thanks again for having me on, Maddie.
Yeah, always, man. Gordie gets announced last week. I think most of us figured he was a top candidate for the job, just given his success over the years at many levels, and obviously leading Germany to the World Championship at the FIBA World Cup, where Canada finished third. And I think most of us would probably figure that the program was putting an emphasis on a Canadian coach to some degree to take over. Obviously as they meet the qualifications. Just give me your initial thoughts on Gordie getting the job and maybe what he's gonna initially kind of bring to that position to put the senior men's national team to I think a spot that many of us feel they should be, especially coming out of the Paris Olympics, man.
Yeah, no, I think you hit it right on like right on the nail right on the head there. Yeah, I think Gordie Herbert, just given his like success at the FIBA level and experience, it's a huge kind of hire, and I think that's a big reason why I think both of us were pretty sure that he was one of the like kind of top candidates coming into it. Um, So yeah, so I think just from kind of like a FIBA experience and his just the success he's had with the German national team in the last Olympic cycle, that kind of that's a good baseline already of kind of proven success that you can't argue with. And include the fact that he's also Canadian as well, so it's pretty obvious why he was kind of a top candidate. And I think it was in the piece that Oren mentioned over at Raptors Republic where they actually Rowan Barrett and company, they first kind of just went out and reached out actually to their top candidates, Gordie Herbert included, rather than kind of opening it up to like a larger pool of candidates. So that was like a really interesting tidbit from that article. But I think from a high level, though, Gordie Herbert is a proven FIBA coach, and I think it shows that Canada basketball is trying to take FIBA success seriously and prioritize the FIBA game compared to maybe the NBA kind of game. So I think that's a really interesting point to take away from that. Um, but yeah, overall, really happy with the hire. I think it's great to have one of the best, quote unquote, one of the best coaches in the world, and the fact that he's Canadian is also a nice plus too.
Yeah, it's you know, shout out Oren. Hopefully he has a listen. We'll tag him for sure. And great article and excellent work for the Raptors Republic. And like he touched on the fact, where Gordy might, look at a roster for the senior men's national team and say, okay, I want guys that fit the system, are going to, really commit to maybe a bit of a cycle again, especially with the World Cup, because the program knows, and Gordy obviously knows, like the success at the World Cup can automatically earn you a spot to the Olympics. So without having to worry about last chance qualifiers, and so I think Gordy's going to demand, I think, a lot from our current crop of players, and I do believe the senior men's national team will look very different come 2027 for the World Cup, and obviously for the LA Olympics. And that might be a situation where maybe a high profile, high level guy a either doesn't make this team or makes a team, but minutes are very small, relegated, and that player's got to be very okay with that, right? And I know Oren touched on that, and I thought that was interesting. Where that might be something that's already in the forefront already, letting everybody know like um, this roster might look very different, especially from how Jordy put it together the last 2 summers, basically. And your talent pool is going to be different, and we're not going to have some of the veterans probably available like a Kelly Olynyk or Dwight Powell. What seeing now that Gordie's the head coach, have you had much thought about maybe what his staff might look like in terms of, there could be a lot of players or sorry, coaches on the staff in the next couple of years, obviously assisting to run the team when Gordie's not available. Candidates that ultimately didn't get hired as a head coach. I'm wondering where you're at with that and what others might think too in terms of who's going to complete his staff. I thought it was interesting to note like Doug Christie being named the head coach in Sacramento off the interim tag. Jay Triano is not moving on as part of his staff. So, maybe Jay gets another NBA job, but that would be an interesting guy to have alongside Gordie. They obviously has connections throughout the years in the program. Just maybe any thoughts or ideas on a bit of a staff for Gordie there, Chen?
Yeah, no, I think the big thing to me right now, and it's pretty obvious based on, Oren touched on it as well. It's just at the current stage, Gordie doesn't have kind of established relationships with most of the senior men's national team core that's in the NBA,
Right,
including SGA, Jamal Murray, RJ Barrett, those kind of players. So I think a big part of like filling out the assistant coaching staff will be having that presence or having that person who has that kind of connection and relationship that's already been established. And immediately somebody that comes to mind is Nate Mitchell, who has been with the national team program for a long time, and recently, at least in the final two AmeriCup qualifiers, he was the head coach. Looking like, I'm guessing that he's going to be the head coach for the AmeriCup this summer.
right.
Um, Maybe that also gets extended to like the winter core if Gordie is still at Bayern Munich and there's no or his availability is kind of up in the air. So I think that's really the most important thing, because I know that's kind of been seen as the biggest quote unquote weakness or drawback of the Gordie Herbert hiring. Um, but to me, I think that is true, and there's no denying that. But I think I'm just looking, and in the research that I've done um, for the piece that I have coming out soon, I think Gordie Herbert is really good at establishing the relationships after and with time. I think he had a really incredibly close relationship with Dennis Schroeder,
Right.
who was named the captain of the German national team. Um, and everything that everybody on that German national team, the players, all the quotes that come out of it, they're all talking about how close knit, how much it felt like a family. Um, so I think Gordie is able to kind of develop those kind of close ties with players, get people to, like you mentioned, understand their role. Bring 12 guys, but then probably you're only playing 8 or 9, um, and the last 3 guys are going to have to buy into that role, because that's just the way he kind of looks at kind of team roster construction. So from a coaching staff, I think that will come in due time. I think the most important thing is obviously building that relationship with SGA, but having somebody who's already been there on the staff would definitely help. So I think that's where someone like Nate Mitchell, and I,
Right.
I think on Twitter, I think Arash Madani was talking about like Dave Smart, who's over the longtime head coach of Carlton, who has some ties with Gordie Herbert. Um, so yeah, I think it's pretty open ended, but I think the most important thing is just adding some guys with some more familiarity with the program, since Gordie has kind of left and went over to the German national team.
Yeah, I think like having a connector, to the
Yeah.
players like Nate Mitchell, who's close with them and has helped train them, and that is a good point you made in terms of Gordie's ability to establish relationships because I've read that and I think we've seen that too. Like it's pretty obvious when he comes and takes over a program like the German national team that is on the rise and is producing very good players as well. That he's getting them to buy in, accept roles. He was obviously Gordie was outstanding at the World Cup. There's the great image of him sitting like just exhausted, but taking the moment in. I think something like that would it obviously resonates with the players too, and they can understand that. And it's not like Gordie, I think, has a bit of familiarity. Like um,
For sure.
he did coach a bit under Nick Nurse at the 2019 World Cup. Now,
Yeah.
players that would be comprising the team in the next couple of years don't weren't part of that team. But I think he was with the team in the 2021 Olympic tournament
Yeah.
in Victoria too. So obviously, there's some guys that do know him a bit. But yeah, it'll be interesting. Obviously, it takes time to kind of put staff together, and I'm sure Gordie's already got people in mind and who he's probably connected with. What obviously the meat of the conversation, X's and O's, and really maybe Gordie's style, philosophy, his approach to how he wants to play the game on both ends. And given the personnel that he's going to have available and the guys that we think would make up the senior men's national team for Canada basketball, and especially 27 and 28 for those big tournaments. What do we think we can expect from Gordie and obviously the staff under him that um, how they want to run a team and his approach and his philosophy, man.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's actually kind of the piece that I'm working on right now.
Perfect.
Yeah, so basically kind of my approach to kind of something like that is going through, I guess, representative samples of the last or the 3 summers he was the coach of the German national team for. So that was the bronze medal finish at Eurobasket 2022. That's the 2023 World Cup win. Um,
Right.
and then that's like the Olympics in Paris last year. So I'm currently still making my way through. I think I'm choosing about like 3 or 4 games per tournament just to kind of see, um, like look at large scale trends and things like that. I will say, I think the biggest thing that has stood out to me so far is those German national teams played a lot of 5 out.
Right.
If there is kind of an overarching theme for the German national team, it's their bigs can shoot. Um, I think Johannes Voigtman, who's like a 7-footer, is a really great shooter. Daniel Tice can kind of space the floor out. Mo Wagner can kind of shoot a little bit as well. So I think that the biggest thing that jumped out so far for me is that Germany plays a lot of 5 out. They have their big screening a lot and opening up the paint for Dennis Schroeder and Franz Wagner to attack the basket and pulling away kind of opposing teams and the rim protectors. And I think that's something that is pretty in line almost with what the national team look like the last couple of years under Jordy. There was a lot of kind of Dwight Powell and Kelly Olynyk um, handling the ball or like running dribble handoffs at the top of the key or at the
Yeah.
elbow. Um, there was a lot of playing small for Canada, at least in the last few years. So you're adding quote unquote a Dylan Brooks, maybe another shooter to space the floor, especially given how he's developed and him and Dort. Um, but I do think that proves to be a pretty stark philosophical difference from where we might be going with the national team based on the roster. Um, you know, we saw against France that Canada really got beaten up inside, and a lot of people, myself included, have been really high on Zach Edey for the last
Right.
couple of years and his national team impact. And I think just seeing his transition to the NBA this year has made me even more of a believer in that impact. And when you look at somebody like Zach Edey, a lot of his offensive impact is going to come from, and in the NBA this year at least, where he wasn't kind of like a primary option, kind of comes from, offensive rebounding, crashing the glass. And we've seen how valuable that is with someone like Steven Adams in Houston,
Right.
and what that means for creating second opportunities, creating extra possessions. So I think that's an interesting. Not to say that it won't work, because I think there are parts of Edie's game where he's a huge screener. So that is going to be so important for pick and rolls and things like that. But I think that is something interesting where I think Canada basketball will probably diverge from the German national team and his offensive system, because I think at the end of the day, you do want to keep Edie as close to the paint and close to the rim as possible, whether that's for a duck in or a post up, or if that's him crashing the glass. Um, so I think what that looks like to me is probably the primary attack, or the primary kind of system they're going to be running might be more of a 4 out, um, one in, and having Edie like near the dunker spot. So, or like screening, and then it's kind of 5 out as well.
Right.
But then I think one person that, or one player who maybe was a little underutilized in the last kind of cycle under Jordy was Kelly Olynyk. Um, he obviously has some defensive concerns, but I think that kind of fits in perfectly into that kind of 5 out kind of idea that Gordie likes to implement. So I think that's the main thing right now that I can see. There's a lot of kind of interesting sets that Gordie runs. He's a really good play caller. I think that's something that's jumped out. Like there's enough freedom in the offense to read and react. There's enough freedom for the players to kind of call their own number, if they got a mismatch, for example. But every few plays, there's like this cadence where, there's a little bit of a drought and Gordie's going to drop something absolutely magical and they get an easy bucket at the rim. And that kind of helps sustain those kind of in between games, or in between sequences where the players are kind of taking control. So I think there's a lot to be excited about overall. I'm excited to kind of see how Edie is kind of incorporated to his vision.
Yeah, it's I mean, one thing that's in Gordy's benefit is, the core of this team for these, like, the major tournaments, and then, like, I'm kind of highlighting, the World Cup in 27, the Olympics 28, where now there's the roster is entering its second quad of playing together and familiarity, right? So, regardless of who the
For
head
sure.
coach is or has been, like, these guys now understand each other's games and where to move and be, and regardless of what Gordy wants to implement and run, like, and he's dealing with um, stars and an MVP and Shea. I think the players will be able to really implement things quite easily. They're used to each other. That's going to benefit Gordy and his staff. And then, like you touched on, Gordy has timely play calling and recognizing situations and moments. Yeah, and the size thing. Obviously, we were screaming for Zach to be a part of the team last summer. It didn't happen. Obviously, heading into his first season in Memphis, but will be a vital piece. And I don't think we want to pull him too far out of the paint and off the block so much. Just given what the competition will be like, that he has to play against defensively. But it'd be interesting to see kind of how they go about maybe lack of size or recognizing and identifying one more big that they think might be a part of a team going forward. Um,
Yeah, I think for me, like that other big is Cabangeli. I'm a
yeah,
big fan.
yeah.
Um, very, very similar kind of archetype of a player, I guess, to Edie, where, physical big, um, which you kind of want to also kind of keep closer to the rim as well. So I think ideally that kind of platoon as the 5 man is kind of what I'm hoping for, and kind of going to be advocating for over the next 4 years, 3 years. Um, I think
Well,
that's definitely, yeah,
he'll be prominent, I think, this summer at the AmeriCup. Like, to me, that just makes sense. They've had him a big piece of the windows, and also, um, I don't know if he was right on the cusp of making the team last summer
mm,
out of Vegas. I saw him in Vegas, obviously, and then they went with Ken Birch over him, right? But
yeah,
yeah, like, if you platoon like that, that is a good start. Uh,
for
I
sure.
agree with you, and especially given that's an area that hurt the team last summer deeply. And I did want to touch on just the America Cup is approaching this summer, and um, Gordie's not going to coach that is our understanding, and probably likely Nate Mitchell with advising and guiding from Gordie. I wonder if they've identified. Give me your thoughts on this. If they've identified, a young NBA guy that they think could be part of their 27, 28 rosters where they've reached out to him. And I haven't seen anything. Obviously, there's been speculation. Lots of us have kind of chatted about it
Yeah.
on X, whether we think, an up and coming young NBA guy might be part of this team this summer, and the staff, what we know of the staff so far, and even Rowan have reached out and said, hey, maybe consider this because we think you have an opportunity, for the major tournaments. If you have any thoughts on that, Chen, and just because I think the expectation is that the roster will be a lot of the guys from the last two windows to qualify for the America Cup. But given that we know Gordie's now the coach and how he likes to um, run things, if maybe they've potentially identified a player that or someone that might stand out to you that they think would benefit and maybe make this team, man.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think even the last pod that we had, or that I was on for, um, we talked about like Shaden Sharp, which I think is the most like best case scenario is to bring Shaden Sharp in.
Right.
A guy who was at training camp last summer, who like wasn't participating as kind of trying to get a roster spot necessarily, but just in the program, in training camp, getting familiar with the system, getting familiar with guys, just being present basically.
Yeah.
Um, I think obviously the ceiling is and the potential is tantalizing. Like Shaden Sharp, if he can reach his ceiling, we're looking at a star player. Um, whether he gets there is a different story, but I think bringing him into the program and having him play a kind of a bigger role in the America Cup is definitely something that I think would be um, good for his development and also good for Canada basketball as well. Another guy who kind of in a similar boat, Leonard Miller, who's again was at the training camp last summer,
Right.
been kind of involved in the program through these kind of training camps as like a half participant. I think that's like I think all those signs show that these two young players are kind of the main quote unquote young players that are at young NBA players that are in Canada basketball's mind when it comes to potentially like this cycle, the cycle after that, based on their participation in the last cycle. So those are obviously best case scenarios. Like I'm not sure how realistic that is, um, but I do think that it's encouraging at least to hear that they're taking the America Cup more seriously and kind of, they had that new kind of 4-year strategy where like every tournament they want to be on the podium and they want to put out the best team possible.
Yeah.
Um, that didn't happen at the 2022 America Cup, right? They didn't put their best NBA players. They didn't bring even their best European pros. Um, it was a lot of really young players, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? Like a lot of players who played in the America Cup have become winter core mainstays. Trey Bell Haynes, Thomas Kennedy,
Yeah.
Javon Henry Blair, who kind of has really come on strong in the last few windows. So I'm not necessarily knocking the approach to the last America Cup, but based on everything that we've heard, it sounds like they're taking it more seriously and they want this to be a core of the European pros who are going to make up the qualifier winter core
Yeah.
and for the World Cup, and those are really important games. So Canada basketball has shown in the past that they're going to be able to bring out the really kind of upper echelon of European pro talent for those kind of competitions. So I think that's nice to see. Um, and so whether or not which young NBA player actually is on the list, yeah, I think best case scenario, Shaden Sharp, Leonard Miller. I really want to see Keyshawn George, who has I've been really impressed with his rookie year. The 3-point efficiency isn't quite there, but I like the volume. I really like the defense. He is looking like a player who, kind of came out of nowhere, wasn't really on my radar, and then this rookie year has kind of really solidified him as somebody that I think could really add something even as early as like the World Cup in 2027.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think those would be the three guys that I would want. But again, how realistic is that? Not sure.
Yeah, I mean, shout out Liban Osman and the Canadian Basketball Podcast. Yeah, he had Keyshawn George on his first episode. And Keyshawn talked about that, like he's very interested. Now, does that mean this summer at the America Cup? Who knows, right?
Yeah,
Do the Wizards put him in summer league? Who knows? He might, in after his first year, to be past that because they know what they have in the kid. But you know, there's interest there, and he might be targeting 27, 28. And then when I ask that question, it also makes me wonder too, like you know it's a bit loaded. We talk about Shaden Sharp, Leonard Miller. They kind of know where their games are at, and a guy like Shaden specifically might just say, "No, I'm good this summer because I know that I can make this team in 27, 28. I'm going to be at another level, be playing that much better where the program can't deny it and they can't not take him. So I wonder if there's a confidence in that piece for a kid like that too. But, if they recognize the opportunity to really sell it to some of these players, to embrace the America Cup, it'll be interesting to see. I think we're all going to be uh, waiting to see what camp invites and roster
yeah,
breakdown looks like because you're gonna need guys like Cabangeli and TBH probably from Europe and
yeah,
a Thomas Kennedy, and these will be guys that will be needed in the winter windows, which are for the World Cup, which are coming up, very soon. They're gonna
yeah,
start breaking that down, right? So, yeah, and we get to see some senior men's national team stuff pretty quick come this summer and what you know, a system might look like under Gordie and his staff and what they're trying to implement. Anything you want to touch on with regards to Gordie? Anything else? And the hire. Maybe uh, anything about anybody who didn't get the job that was kind of a final candidate. Any other thoughts on the coaching tree there, man?
yeah. I think one thing that definitely we should probably touch upon is the player relationship quickly again. I think
Yeah,
earlier we were talking about like, this really close knit relationship with the players that he brought in the German national team, and he was a really strong advocate for those players. At the same time though, players that were not kind of part of that 3-year commitment and core, it was really interesting that Gordy was so kind of quote unquote uncompromising or even dismissive at times of adding to the core, kind of like what Canada basketball did coming into the Olympics, adding like Trey Lyles, for example, Kem Birch, um, Jamal Murray, obviously the big ad. I think that was definitely something that definitely came up because, he left Isaiah Hartenstein at home
yeah,
for the World Cup and the Olympics. They left Maxi Kleba, and each player had different circumstances, whether it was, kind of an injury in Kleba's case, um, Isaiah Hartenstein kind of focusing on the NBA career at the time.
yeah,
Um, but I think that's definitely a factor here. And given everything that we've heard with Gordie's availability, um, this kind of starts to kind of sound like what we had with Nick Nurse in 2021, where it's like, we want a 3-year commitment. We need the core, which I love the idea of having the core. I still do. Um, but then how can we have that kind of strict commitment when it doesn't look like the head coach is always there, for example?
yeah,
Um, and then in the case of Nick Nurse, obviously he left when it mattered for his career, which makes sense, right? Everybody is going to do what's best for their own career. So I think that's definitely something interesting and something to watch how it plays out. Um, I think in some of the pieces I've read is, Gordy's talked about the first year up until the first summer. he kind of tried to build a relationship with about 40 players in the German national team program. So having that like at least short list initial list of like a player pool of 40 guys before whittling it down to 12. Um, so I think that's definitely something that's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. Another thing is that I think I forgot to mention earlier is just the defensive side of the ball. Um, with the German national team, Gordie played kind of very a stark difference from how Jordy played and how aggressive Canada was on the
Right.
perimeter, pressing up, picking up very high, often in the backcourt, switching everything. Germany, at least in the games that I've watched so far, they've been kind of more traditional, drop coverage, switching when they have to, but most of the time keeping their bigs at home. And that makes sense for the skills and the roster construction that they had. So I'm curious how that's going to play out, knowing that Canada basketball has a plethora of really good perimeter defenders. You would think with the addition of Zach Edey that there's a huge rim protector now as well. So I'm
Yeah.
curious how that's going to play out. Um, and even I think we might get some hints this year at the America Cup because, Gordie likes to play more traditional defense. Um, and Nate Mitchell, in the games he's played, he's shown to be a lot more kind of experimental, mixing in zone here and there, being a little more aggressive with the switching. So I wonder how much we'll see, how much input Nate Mitchell will have on the defense if he is the head coach, like we're assuming at the America Cup. So, but yeah, I think overall, really excited for the hire. Really excited to see what the team looks like under Gordie, and hopefully that comes sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I'm hoping Gordy, and I'm sure he's done it a bit already, and he obviously knows, the core of this team having competed against them too, right? So
Yeah,
um, he's already probably brainstorming a lot and looking at, situations and personnel, and now he might be looking at it like, wow, defensively, maybe I can get away from being uh, a little more safe and traditional because I have
right,
these weapons.
right.
Choose your weapon defensively, especially on the perimeter, and guys are gonna. Oh man, you think about Andrew Nemhard, Nikhil, Lou picking up guys full court and just hounding them, and
Exactly.
running them into a double team and a trap, and the weapons are really nice. So I think hopefully, just as people that follow the program and whatnot, like he gets a little more, um, you know, dangerous in a sense where it could create some great opportunities on offense, right? So,
Yeah,
um, yeah, I like the hire too. Like, I think we probably knew kind of who the candidates were to a degree. There was, several names being floated out there. Gordy is obviously the most accomplished and successful, very experienced, and the more that um, has been written and talked about with respect to Gordy being hired and being placed in that position. I do like it as well. I think the program kind of needs it just to have a little bit of a maybe a was a little bit of a rock star at that spot in terms of just it's hard to deny the success, and it's also hard to deny the success when the program has directly seen it, like when they had a great World Cup, best finish ever for Canada basketball for the senior men's national team, win the bronze, qualify for the Olympics, but Gordie's team won the whole thing. You know what I mean? And like, um, they had a good run themselves, and that was the man that spearheaded it from the coaching spot. So I agree. I like it a lot too, and there's obviously stuff, um, and you touched on it very well about his ability to bring guys together and connect. I don't see that being an issue with this team and this program because a lot of the players are already really close with each other, and they have continuity and familiarity. And I think Gordy can just kind of build on that as well, man.
yeah, for sure. I think exciting times for the program for sure.
Yeah, let's. Man, can we talk some Canadian NBA playoff highlights a little bit?
Sure.
We're into the second round, obviously, and a lot of the guys that are have moved on with their teams are um, making a lot of noise. Obviously, Corey Joseph and the Orlando Magic bounced out in the first round, but I think I know I was just loving the revival of Corey this season in Orlando. Like, so cool to see. Keeps a spot in the league and played a really valuable role. He got 21 starts, including the playoffs for the Magic. They were decimated by injuries, and he really did a good job with that. And he's going to enter a second year with them this upcoming season with a club option, but showing he can still contribute. Uh, just initial thoughts on seeing Corey do that, Chen, and just proving the naysayers wrong a little bit, and we weren't sure what to expect. Getting cut last year and then not being invited to the camp for senior men's national team, but played really well for Orlando and a great vet. If anyone has not seen his end of season media interview with Orlando after they got knocked out by the Celtics, go check it out. It's great reflection and insight by a guy that's played a long time in the NBA and understands just what it takes and just appreciating the moment, man. He understands that, um, I think he seems like he's loving the ability to still go play every day and contribute, man. Just give me your thoughts.
Yeah, no, I mean, if you think about it, I think what he's entering year like 13 or 14
Yeah,
as an NBA vet, like that he's had an incredible career as um, a solid NBA player, carved
yeah,
it out and kind of really that first kind of wave of Canadian NBA talent in 2011 being drafted alongside Tristan Thompson. But yeah, no, it was really cool to see. I think being cut obviously last summer or not even being invited to training camp was definitely um, a big blow to see. And given his play the year before, I don't think he would have probably made the team in the end for the Olympics. But not even having the chance to kind of compete when he's given a lot to the program, um, definitely kind of a bittersweet way, I think, to end, I guess, his playing days with Canada basketball.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, I think like you mentioned, Orlando was really decimated by injuries, and he kind of saw that opportunity and seized it to be kind of that stabilizing presence. Uh, a lot of times you don't need to be, the superstar um, to be successful in the NBA, and I think Corey showed that his whole career. Just being a stabilizing presence is important. Not turning over the ball, taking care of the ball, making good decisions. Um, it's a lot more. It's really valuable for winning basketball. So yeah, obviously Orlando didn't get far in the playoffs, but it was really cool to see Corey kind of be a stabilizing presence and the team performing like a lot better with him on the floor um, compared to like kind of the last few years where he's kind of been um, jumping from team to team.
yeah. Like he managed to kind of get starts, not kind of get starts, still even when some guys came back and they were, maybe
Yeah,
not 100% healthy, but they were playing and getting minutes. But the coach there recognized that Kojo was, um, you know, being really effective and contributing. And so, yeah, to me, that was I think one of my favorite storylines this season, just from a Canadian standpoint. And I don't hide the fact I'm a big Kojo guy, and I love to kind of show him love, and so that's just been a really nice thing to see. We'll stick with another guard, Andrew Nemhard, man, just continues to rise. Shaq loves the kid. We love the kid. Just really crucial for the Pacers on both ends of the floor. He's going to routinely guards the other team's best, backcourt player or wing player. Just got a real nice toughness to him. I like that a lot. Doesn't back down from um, anyone. And I think in terms of the senior men's national team perspective, like this was, I think, what a lot of us were advocating for. Perhaps I know you especially, Chen, just to have him playing alongside Shea Moore. just given the fact we didn't think Jamal was necessarily fully healthy. But yeah, Nemhard touch on him, and and what this maybe means, like this is just building in the young man's career, but from a Canada basketball standpoint, maybe what this might mean for him as well.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think Caitlin Cooper, who covers the Pacers, who said it the best. It's like not a lot of players have signature moves on the defensive end.
Yeah,
And Andrew Nemhard's signature move of kind of like pulling the chair while a player is driving, not like when he's posting up, but while they're driving, and kind of catching guys off guard, like it happened a couple times against Donovan Mitchell in Game 1 of the second round. Um, just shows just how incredibly poised um, and high. I don't like to use the word high IQ, but like the basketball feel is just there. You can see it. Just he's like an oracle of knowledge on the floor,
yeah,
and I think for me, I think last couple of years advocating for Andrew Nemhard to be not only just be a part of the national team, but be a huge key contributor. A big part of that was just kind of that feel on offense as well as on the defensive end. Um, yeah, I mean, like honestly, I think I'm obviously biased because I'm a really big fan of Nemhard and have been for quite a while, but I honestly think like there's a star level player there.
yeah,
Um, whether that happens with Indiana, like we'll see. But yeah, I just think there's so many little things that he does on the floor that contribute to winning and might not show up necessarily in the box score. You know, being extra early on a rotation maybe might not show up directly as a stop, for example. It might not be attributed to him, but you know being extra early on this rotation, it has like a chaining effect and a butterfly effect on the rest of the defense. And so, yeah, I think just those little things, he's just so impactful. Um, for me, again, I think it's really realistic that he becomes kind of a top 3 Canadian in the NBA
yeah,
relatively soon. Um, so yeah, I think for me, as one of his biggest supporters, I think him being a big part of the national team is incredibly important. And he playing alongside Halliburton, he can play with another high volume, high usage playmaking guard. Um, last year he showed that he can kind of take on that load a little bit in the Celtics series in the conference finals. Um, yeah, so just not enough good things to say. I think thankfully he's been really involved with the program, and I think moving forward, he's definitely my starting point guard um, moving forward for the national team, especially for this cycle.
yeah. Man, he continues to sort of just like kind of wow, almost like seems like every game. Like obviously in an 82 game schedule, like there's down nights, but um, I agree with you. He has a chance to really be like one of the top Canadians in the league. Like
Yeah,
I don't think that's unrealistic by any means, especially if on his next deal he goes somewhere else possibly. That's a factor too. And I'm not sure if um, a lot of people realize this, but he is like a lot bigger than people think. Like
mhm,
standing next to him last summer, like he's very he's obviously taller than me, but he's pretty broad. Like he's pretty built through the shoulders, and I just think that on the NBA floor he might look a little smaller, but he's tougher and bigger, I think, than people realize, and allows him to guard really 1 through 3 easily.
yeah,
And so the Pacers, I do believe, and I think we all think this, is that they know they got a real uh, possible star with this kid, and to get him where they did in the draft is outstanding. And credit to Andrew, man, he got it done, man. He worked his butt off, and he's if you kind of even compare him to Mathurin, his teammate, another Canadian who has battled injuries, no question. Benedict Mathurin has not always been healthy, but I think Andrew's kind of become more prominent on that team for the Pacers, and yeah,
yeah,
he's a key guy for the program. We all feel he didn't get enough burn in Paris, and circumstances are what they are. But yeah, it's exciting, and like I think the Pacers got a real shot to beat the Cavs. Game two is going on right now. I'm not sure what's going on with it as we record this, but I think the Pacers can go deep, and I hope they go deep, man.
Yeah, and just a note on like the broad shoulders. I know like his signature move on offense is like that deceleration bump.
Yes,
Yeah, he just like sheds like Brooke Lopez in the
yeah.
first round. Yeah, I know that's definitely become a signature move. Just talking about the strength that he's put on onto his frame. So yeah, I mean like yeah, I think he's a really special player. Um, yeah, I'm looking forward to kind of seeing more of him in a Canada basketball jersey.
So we got Oklahoma City versus Denver, Thunder Nuggets. Game one last night. As we record this, Aaron Gordon hits the winner from three. But listen, we got SGA, Lou Dort, Jamal Murray. Has the makings of an incredible series. I think we all think that. Um, and then it's great to see that Lou is picking up Jamal, and it's almost like a senior men's national team practice. And I think you posted last night during the game yesterday that SGA and Jamal were the only two players in double figures at the end of the first quarter. So we know that the Canadian guys are obviously at the forefront. They're going to be impactful. Like well, I think we're just waiting for Shea to get the MVP trophy at some point here. And I don't know when they're going to make that announcement or they're actually going to do it. But maybe if you got any thoughts, just even on the series on this matchup, Chen, and obviously I think a lot of us want to see the Thunder go deep and really cement this season for Shea specifically. Figuring that he's going to win MVP and hopefully taking his team to the finals. But any thoughts maybe on the series and the Canadians in particular, man?
Yeah, I mean, I think can't really remember the last time we had like this high profile of Canadians matching up in the playoffs.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, like 1A versus 1B, I guess, or
yeah,
maybe it's not quite that close, but it's pretty cool to just see two star players kind of go at it. Um, yeah, and like yesterday with I think with Jamal Murray, it's a little bit more feast or famine with his kind of game where if the jump shot is there, like they're spiritual experiences when they happen.
yeah,
There's just nothing you can do, and he reaches heights that not many players can ever reach. And yesterday, the first quarter looked like it was trending in that direction, so that was cool. Um, yeah, and obviously he's always been a huge playoff performer. I know the last year, struggling with some injuries and the efficiency might not have been there, but he's always been an incredible playoff performer. Um, yeah, and then SGA just the MVP of the league this year. I thought he played really well yesterday, especially distributing the ball and doing, just getting to his spots, which is the thing with Shea. You can't really stop him from getting to his spots, um, especially now that he's added that mid-range pull-up.
yeah,
It's the spots are almost everywhere on the court
yeah,
inside the 3-point line. So yeah, no, I think that's definitely the series that I'm going to be watching the closest, just because of the Canada basketball content. And yeah, and even Lou Dort, who I didn't even mention, like he's been playing, he's become he's developed into such a great player. I think I've been relatively lower on Dort because of the offense in the past, but he's like he's truly become like a good shooter.
he
Um,
has.
and like that was always my worry the last few years with him playing on the national team. Is like teams just basically forcing Canada basketball to give him the ball and let him shoot a three, or something that opposing defenses are going to live with. But when you're shooting at the clips he's shooting at over the volume he's shot at over the last couple of years, it's like that's a good shot for the offense now. If it's a catch and shoot three. So, and obviously the defense, it's the perimeter defense is just suffocating. Um, so yeah, no, I think that's definitely the series that I'm going to be watching the most. And game one was a crazy ending.
Yeah,
Um, so yeah, no, just really really great hoops overall, I think.
yeah. No, I mean that. Like I said, could be one of the best series that we watched for quite a while, and I'm still, um, like I'm still kind of struggling to like understand how OKC lost that game. They were just, like like Shea needed a little help in that game, and Jalen Williams just didn't bring it. And um, Holmgren just it's just not physical enough. There's concern there, I think, but you expect him to bounce back. It took that three at the end by Aaron Gordon for them to take the loss, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, no, it is cool, man. We got Canadian content everywhere, and you love Andrew Nemhard. I love Nikhil Alexander Walker. I just want to touch on him real quick. The Wolves play the Warriors in Game 1 here, coming up right away. Uh, and Nikhil has played his role exceptionally well this season. I've watched the Wolves a lot, just to make an effort to watch Nikhil. Um, his role has been really crucial at times. Chris Finch had called him their best player because of his role, and then he's worked himself into a raise. He's going to get paid. I'm not sure if the Wolves are going to be able to keep him, just given that they got to spend on Naz Reid and Julius Randle as well, and
Right.
hopefully Nikhil gets an opportunity to stay there. I know he loves it, but he's and he's a great interview. Like he had a great interview 2 days ago at their practice. A lot of good reflection and thoughtful, and I think he's got great insight to what makes him successful and makes their team successful. And he was really good against the Lakers. Like just he was a connector, just kind of between the zone, attacking the zone very smartly, and then um, finding the guys at the right time, and then on defense, just staying really active, full court, and helping Edwards force turnovers. And Nikhil played in all 82 games for the Wolves this year. Obviously, without being too much of a stand for him there, but yeah, he. I love Nikhil, man, and he's going to be part of our wing and backcourt group in 27, 28 without question. And I think he was a little disappointed with his play last summer, and I think he said that too. And I think he seems motivated. So, yeah, any thoughts on Nikhil, man, and just what his season's been like, and helping the Wolves have success, man.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's been incredible to watch. I think I feel like I keep saying that about all these Canadian guys in the NBA, but I
Yeah,
think it's really come to that point where maybe 5 to 10 years ago we were looking at Canadian guys in the NBA, but maybe not playing big roles on teams, but just being in the NBA. But yeah, and like now we're just seeing so many players have such a big impact on the teams they're playing on good teams too as well.
right.
Um, yeah, like I still remember like just thinking back to kind of before he even got to Minnesota, it was he had a kind of a tough start to his career with New Orleans with the playing time, a little bit of the efficiency,
Yeah,
um, and then I think it was a really like mature development to his game where almost I think for a lot of role players it becomes can you hone and do really well in 2 3 things so that you get on the court, and maybe you whittle away at you know the off the dribble creation and kind of off the dribble kind of star kind of I guess moves, to turn yourself into an impactful player, and that's exactly what Nikhil's kind of done. Accepted kind of a smaller role on offense, but um, really becoming a high level defender. So that's been really cool to watch. I think this year has been really interesting for him. The regular season, of course, he was such an impactful part and integral part of the Wolves season in the regular season.
yeah,
And then this, I think the first round playoffs was kind of interesting to me. I think the just based on the amount of minutes he was playing, I think Dante DiVincenzo in the trade kind of became that second guard
yeah,
for the Wolves, which Nikhil kind of played as more of a role last year. Um, and so, I think his minutes were a little bit down compared to like the Phoenix first round playoff series last year.
yeah.
Um, and part of it might just also just be the size of like the Lakers, like I know they didn't have as many bigs, but like the size of their ball handlers.
And
Um,
their wings are big.
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. So yeah, maybe who knows? Maybe Chris Finch kind of goes to Nikhil a little more in the series against Golden State with Steph, obviously, Pajemski. maybe we see a little bit more of that. But I think, yeah, like Nikhil, he's turned himself into a legitimate NBA player that's going to get paid, like you mentioned. So
Yeah,
um, wherever he ends up going this summer, it'll be great. I hope he gets locked up for the next 3-4 summers so
yeah,
that he's
please,
here with the
please.
national team.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, no, great season, and I think that's definitely something that I'll be watching for a little bit in the second round. Is does he get a little bit more play time just with the matchup? Um, yeah,
yeah. I haven't watched them like when Randall was out for stretches and Gobert, like Finch just Chris Finch had to just kind of go to the bench and just get minutes wherever he could.
yeah,
And so Nikhil definitely played more, and
right,
the minutes have gotten reduced since guys have come back, and the rules increased on those guys coming back. But
yeah,
and in the playoffs, I think you try to shorten your bench anyway. And
yeah, for sure.
you
Oh
know,
yeah, no,
first round matchup driven, no question.
exactly.
Um, but he's been, and he even admitted, I think it was 2 days ago. Um, great interview. I think I highlighted it on X today, just from the Wolves there. Just he recognized he didn't have um, that many great games against the Lakers. Actually, in the closeout game, he did have 10 points. He was pretty good.
Yeah,
Um, minutes were a little bit more, but yeah, like outstanding. Just been a fan of his growth, and I find
for
him
sure.
very just from um, maybe a basketball standpoint, like uh, and even off the floor in some way, except for the fashion. But he he's kind of a relatable guy, man. Like I think you get to maybe some position or situation in life, and then you gotta um, adapt, right, and find a way to make
Yep.
things work. And he's done that in his pro journey in the NBA, and I think that's kind of relatable in life, and so I've just grown to really like him. Uh,
Yeah,
yeah, man.
he's
So
a great interview as well, I think.
yeah,
At training camp last summer,
yeah,
in the media scrum, like, I thought his answers were, like, really insightful, and
yeah,
it felt like he was, like, really kinda digging deep to give answers, to a lot of questions, and I think I really appreciated that.
yeah.
Um,
He's got
so yeah,
great
no,
perspective, man. Great
yeah,
perspective. Yeah,
exactly.
and he talked about too. He's got a young son there, so just what that does for you off the floor, and just maturity and stuff. So
Right.
yeah, no, shout out Nikhil and the Wolves. I'm definitely going for them, man. I want them. Maybe we'll get like a Wolves Thunder West final. How dope would that be,
Mm,
man? That'd be so cool, man.
yeah.
I would be very pumped on that, man. Like, um, just
Wolves Thunder conference finals, and then Thunder Pacers finals.
please, man, let's do it, right? It would just be a Canada basketball Canadian content finals, and just
Exactly,
we'd be
exactly.
loving that. Chen, man, anything else you want to add or plug or promote? I know you got a piece coming up soon for Raptors Republic, right?
Yeah, yeah, I'm working on that Gordie Herbert kind of X's and O's deep dive, which, sneak preview, I guess, today a
Yeah,
little bit. Um, yeah, I think that's mainly it. Just kind of stay tuned for that. Should be coming in the next few weeks. But yeah, as always, man, Maddie, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it and love the work that you always put in. So yeah, really glad to be able to share this platform with you.
yeah, me too, man. Love the conversations all the time, and whether it's here or on X, shout out the boys in the group chat, and the whole Canadian basketball community and followers, and yeah, man, we're gonna keep this going, and it's an exciting time for the program, and I think there'll be a lot of dialogue this summer about it, man. Always appreciate you.
Yep, appreciate you too. Thanks, Maddie.
All right, that does it for another episode of Canada Hoops. I want to thank Jonathan Chen for pulling up. Remember to rate and review us wherever you get your podcasts. Keep supporting Canada basketball and our Canadian Hoopers, and we will see you on the next episode.